Hello everyone. Welcome back. Today, we've got some crucial news you don't want to miss. Let's dive right into the top financial headlines and break down what's happening. This week, all eyes are on the US as inflation data for September is set to be released. Of course, other major economies are also dropping their inflation numbers, but the US report is grabbing the spotlight due to its significance for the Federal Reserve's decisions and the overall economic outlook. And right before this big reveal, the Wall Street Journal featured a major article on how health insurance costs are fueling inflation, a topic hitting home for many Americans. You've probably noticed the disconnect between what official inflation reports say and what we feel in our wallets. The everyday costs we face, especially for things like healthcare, often seem way higher than what the numbers suggest. And for most Americans, one of the biggest headaches is the skyrocketing cost of health insurance. Sure, you can hold off on buying a house if mortgage rates are high, or cut back on luxury items when prices go up. But when it comes to healthcare, especially essential services covered by insurance, there's no waiting game. The Wall Street Journal article dives into this issue, pointing out that even though inflation might be cooling off in other parts of the economy, healthcare costs are still climbing. According to a survey by KFF, a non-profit focused on healthcare, employer health insurance premiums jumped another 7% this year, the second year in a row of such increases. Over the last few years, family premiums have gone up by more than $3,000, with the average family premium now sitting at a whopping $25,500. Employers are feeling the pinch too. This year, businesses paid an extra $1,880 per family, bringing their share of the premium cost to about $19,276. Meanwhile, the average amount workers chip in for family coverage actually went down a bit, dropping by $280 to $6,296. But don't get too excited, the relief is small compared to the overall trend of rising costs. Looking ahead, experts predict that healthcare premiums will keep climbing, with 2025 expected to see another round of increases. Unlike other industries where prices fluctuate more rapidly, healthcare operates on long-term contracts, meaning price hikes take a while to hit, but once they do, they tend to stick. Hospitals, for example, recently secured new contracts that let them charge more, largely to cover rising wages for their own workers. This vicious cycle of higher costs continues, and the burden is falling on everyday Americans. What's worse, it's not just about premiums going up. Deductibles are creeping higher too, meaning you'll be paying more out of pocket before your insurance even kicks in. This year, single employees at large companies saw their deductibles increase by 4%, while workers at smaller firms took an even bigger hit, with deductibles up 6%. To make matters worse, as insurance costs rise, companies and insurers are quietly trimming what's actually covered. Take the popular weight loss drugs as an example. Many insurers have decided to exclude these from coverage, and some employers are opting for cheaper plans that don't cover things like advanced fertility treatments. This means people are paying more but getting less in return. In my opinion, what's particularly frustrating about this situation is how little attention it gets in the bigger picture. Inflation reports might show signs of cooling, but the real pain felt by average Americans is largely overlooked. While Wall Street focuses on the broader economy, everyday expenses like healthcare are squeezing families harder than ever. It's no wonder the Wall Street Journal made this a front-page story. This is a crisis that deserves much more attention, not just from policymakers, but from the media and the public at large. The question is, will anyone do something about it? The second big news I want to share is the latest political update on the US election. With Election Day less than a month away, the final stretch in October is always seen as critical. This is the time when both sides of the political race are hoping for an October surprise, something that shakes things up, maybe even changes the course of the election. An October surprise refers to some kind of unexpected event or bombshell news that hits right before the election, potentially tipping the scales in favor of one candidate. Today's major political headline comes from Bob Woodward's new book, War. It's made waves across the media and has become the top story everywhere, regardless of which side of the political island network is on. The Wall Street Journal reported on the book with a headline that reads, "New book reveals Trump's Putin calls and Russian nuclear threats." The book promises a ton of juicy revelations about global political leaders and gives us a glimpse into how both Biden and Trump have acted on the world stage. One of the most talked about points is how Biden reportedly called Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu a bastard. The book also mentions that during the Russia-Ukraine war, there were moments when Russia threatened to use nuclear weapons. And, get this, Woodward claims that after Trump left the White House, he had as many as 7 phone calls with Putin. The book, packed with explosive stories like this, is set to be released on October 15th. Now, the White House has stayed pretty quiet on the details in Woodward's book, including Trump's alleged conversations with Putin after leaving office. A White House spokesperson said it's not unusual for books to be written about different administrations and declined to comment further. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Trump completely denied the book's claims, calling them made-up stories and saying Woodward had zero access to Trump while writing the book. Trump's team even suggested the book is destined for discount store shelves or worse, should just be used as toilet paper. In a statement at the end of the book, Woodward admits he didn't get interviews with either Biden or Trump for this project. Instead, he says the book is based on hundreds of hours of interviews with people who were directly involved in or witnessed the events. One of the most interesting claims comes from a former intelligence analyst who specialized in Russia. According to this source, Trump was so enamored with Putin that it made him easy to manipulate. Another shocking detail, apparently, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in Russia, Trump secretly sent Putin instant COVID testing devices made by Abbott Laboratories, just for his personal use. Woodward writes that Putin specifically asked Trump not to tell anyone about it, and Trump responded, "I don't care." But Putin insisted, saying, "Don't tell anyone because people will be mad at you, not me. They don't care about me." This particular tidbit has definitely been the talk of the town today. Another major point Woodward covers is a conversation between U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, where Austin warned that if Russia used nuclear weapons, the U.S. would rethink all the limitations on its actions in Ukraine. Now, Trump's camp is flat out denying any of this happened, but things took a new turn when the Kremlin added fuel to the fire. Business Insider reported that Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed that Trump did indeed send COVID testing devices to Putin during his presidency. However, Peskov denied that there were any phone calls between Trump and Putin after Trump left office. Bob Woodward, who gained fame for his reporting on the Watergate scandal, is one of America's most well-known investigative journalists, and pretty much every book he writes becomes a bestseller. So it's likely that the revelations in war will continue to stir things up in the US for a while. Regarding the COVID testing device story, Vice President Kamala Harris has already jumped on this. She criticized Trump for allegedly sending the much-needed testing devices to a dictator like Putin while telling the American public to inject disinfectant. This comment from Harris is spreading rapidly through US media today. Now, there are 2 key points I'd like to share about this whole situation. First, let's not forget how extreme Putin was in his response to the pandemic. He was so paranoid about the virus that he would hold meetings with people, including military leaders, while sitting at the end of ridiculously long tables just to keep his distance. This obsession with avoiding the virus painted a pretty clear picture of his fear. Second, it's not just Putin who reacted in extreme ways. During the pandemic, China's president Xi also took drastic measures. However, while Putin's paranoia was mostly about protecting himself, Xi's policies were more about controlling the population. His extreme zero-COVID policy led to widespread lockdowns and restrictions. Looking back, both of these leaders took extreme, almost bizarre approaches during the pandemic. Finally, on the topic of Woodward's revelations and their potential impact on the upcoming election, The Economist ran a piece asking if these kinds of October surprises really sway elections. While unexpected stories do grab attention, data shows that early October polls and the final polls before Election Day rarely show drastic differences. However, this year's election is one of the most unpredictable in recent memory, and it could all come down to a few thousand votes in key swing states. The idea of an October surprise really took off during the 1980 election when then-President Jimmy Carter was trying to secure a second term. At the time, negotiations with Iran over releasing American hostages were seen as a potential game-changer, but despite the buzz, it didn't save Carter's campaign. Fast forward to 2016, and we saw a real October surprise when FBI Director James Comey made a damaging announcement about Hillary Clinton's emails just weeks before Election Day. Although he later tried to walk it back, the damage was done, and it likely cost Clinton the election. So, could Woodward's latest book create a similar October surprise this year? The Economist suggests it's hard to say, and the effect may not be that clear-cut. But with a few weeks left, we'll have to see if this story continues to develop or if there are any new twists. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.